Good afternoon and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be your facilitator for today's session. Today we have with us Dr. Tam Cummings. She's one of our frequent presenters, less frequent than used to be, but a frequent presenter. She's going to be talking about tools to help with dementia, the Bristol scale, and she's going to explain what that is when she gets started with our presentation. Before you do that though, Tam, would you just tell listeners or participants who may be with us for the first time a little bit about yourself? Don't go into the big story, but the little story.
Oh, well, I was born to very simple people in what was a very simple time. I am a gerontologist. I specialize in dementia, and Glenda and I have been doing this for years and years. Glenda, I know because she was the head of the Area Agency on Aging in Austin. She has a tremendous background in knowing all the government side of stuff, whereas I don't care as much about those rules, regulations. I'm more interested in the types of dementia, the behaviors of dementia, and how we can best get information to families to help them get through this journey that their loved one is on. Where's our VTOS person?
Well, that's a good question. I don't see her on here today. Let's just say that VTOS provides hospice care for people throughout the country. I just messed up totally and didn't pull out. I think it's 8 states. And what I will do is to put a message in the chat box in just a moment, giving you their contact information. Why don't you talk just a moment about hospice, Tam? It's such an important service that's available.
Glenda and I ran into each other this week, and we were chatting, and I had just heard the demographic it was startling, it was upsetting, and Glenda and I both had the same reaction to it. In the United States, the average person is on hospice 5 days. And in 5 days, hospice teams can't even get all the equipment out there. They can't get all of the history. They can't get everything set up that quickly, especially if you're in a rural area. Hospice is designed, it's paid for by your tax dollars. We want you to use it. It is designed to be in place the final year of life, not the final 5 days. It is staffed by a licensed social worker, a registered nurse, a physician who oversees the medications, a person who comes to your home or to the community only to bathe your loved one. That's their sole purpose, is to come do intimate care for your loved one. They have pastoral services, and they're there to help you. Hospice gets paid the same. They do the same services throughout the U.S. A lot of times it can be the team you feel most comfortable with. We love VTOS because we know our VTOS person. We don't know where she is right now, but we do know her. And it's something that you need to ask about. And so when you see your loved one declining, begin to start asking your doctor, use the term, I see a change in status and I need a hospice order. They're going to write the hospice order for you. They'll alert the agencies that do hospice care, and then those agencies will call you and send out a nurse to do the evaluation to determine if your loved one meets hospice qualifications. If they don't, you're not going to be forgotten about. They will come back and check every month, every 6 weeks to see if your person now qualifies. So we want you on hospice care. It's our tax dollars at work. Please use it. It does not mean someone's going somewhere right away. It is there to give you another layer of care to assist you and your loved one as they move towards the end of life.
Now, don't be like friends of mine. I have a dear friend who has dementia and recently was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer on top of that, which is a horrible thing. But her family was referred to hospice and declined it. For whatever reason, they thought that they didn't need it yet. But listen to what Tam says, get it as soon as you possibly can.
Absolutely. It is a layer of care that will save you. These people are awake 24/7. If your loved one needs assistance at 2 a.m, they're going to leave their home and come to your home to do that care. So right. You can't go wrong with hospice care. It's misunderstood. So don't be afraid of it. Go get it and use it. It's our tax dollars. It doesn't cost anything. And they even help with the provision of some of the items that your loved one will need in the final part of life. Okay, so Linda.
Before you do that, Tam,
yes.
couple of questions specifically about hospice before we move on to the Bristol scale.
Are we allowed to hop in and say something?
I would prefer not, and it's not that we don't want to hear from you, it's that it gets out of hand and we lose focus.
Oh,
So
okay.
just
I
wait
was I
until
was just gonna say that they do provide Pampers and all those things
they
also.
do.
So
They do
yeah.
indeed. Thank you, Selena,
Okay.
for
Good.
that. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Sheila had asked, what are the signs that should cause us to ask for hospice? And then Laura said, do they need to be bedbound to call in hospice? Couple of
Don't
questions
need to be
there.
bed bound, but you definitely should have hospice there if they are bed bound because they're near the end of life. That automatically tells us that, and they do need that extra layer of care. Signs that we look for in dementia is a loss of ability to communicate verbally and to understand verbally what's being said. In some states, the criteria is your person has lost weight 3 months in a row. That's an indicator. And one of the things to keep in mind, and Glenda, I think in a strange way, this is helpful. In gerontology, one of our fields of study is thanatology, which is the study of death and grief. And in the process of death, the time is called actively dying. And the time of actively dying is approximately 9 months, which is the opposite of the 9 months it took to conceive and bring a person to life. And so there is a balance there. When your person is actively dying, it doesn't mean they're leaving and going somewhere tomorrow. It means they've entered into that final part of their life. And having hospice there is just another service for everyone. That
Absolutely. Thank you, Tam, for delving into that a little bit. I think
Thank
people
you.
are
Thank you. That
curious
was
about that.
it's a hard discussion. A lady to follow is Barbara Crane. Karen's, I think. She wrote the Little Blue Book. She's a specialist, a hospice nurse. She's just wonderful. So there are great resources out there, but don't be afraid of hospice and ask your physician, is it time for a hospice order, especially if there has been a change in condition. And a change in condition means your loved one is much different than they normally are. Does that do us, Glenda?
That does it. Okay, jump into the Bristol scale, please.
Okay, so one of the things that we got a lot of calls about in the last 2 months since we saw you last was trying to understand, how do I know it's time, and how do I really explain to my doctor what's happening to my loved one? So what happens when we go to the doctor, Glenda, is I get you up early. I make sure you're bathed. I put on your makeup and your lipstick. I put on your earrings and your scarf. I get you dressed nicely in clean clothes. I feed you a good breakfast to try to get you very alert. And then I drive you somewhere, and all that stimulation gets brain chemistry going a little bit more. And then I get you to the doctor. You get into the doctor's office, which is the same office you and I have always seen. The doctor comes in wearing their uniform and they say, "Hi, how are you?" And Glenda, you say, "Oh, I'm fine. How are you?" And I want to kick the chair out from under you because isn't it apparent to everybody how sick you are? And so there's a couple of things that have happened. Number one, by my own fault, I made you look good out of pride, out of love, because I know that you would never want to go to the doctor looking the way I'm seeing you look. And it's not understanding that I'm not giving the doctor the information that they need as a medical professional to truly understand what's going on at home. And so, oh, I forgot, Glenda, before we start, this is everybody's homework. I don't want to forget it. I always forget it. Everybody watching, I want you to write a letter to yourself about what a good caregiver you have been, a caregiver to your loved one, um, what you've gone through. If you're on this call, you've probably been a caregiver very slowly for 10 years. And so just write a letter to yourself about what a good, loving, honest, mature, wonderful person you've been, and address the letter to yourself, and then put the letter away. And yes, Glenda, I know I'm asking people to do something that's very emotional and very hard, but write the letter and then put it away, because writing the letter is going to help you realize you're not crazy. You really have been doing an extraordinary job in care. And it it is going to be something that you're going to value when you look back, because the number one thing that family caregivers of people with dementia say upon death is that I didn't do enough. And Glenda and I, Minerva and I know you do so much that you put your own health at risk. So please do something kind for yourself today, even though it's hard. Write a letter about what a good person you've been. Now, when your loved one has been diagnosed with dementia, one of the things you're going to hear talked about over and over and over are ADLs, 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 and that stands for the activities of daily living. Those are the things that you and I do every day, starting with transfer. We transfer from a lying to a sitting to a standing position, and then we ambulate to toilet. Then we do our bathing, our dressing, our grooming, and our eating. Now, in the United States, we're continuing to use Dr. Katz's scale. Dr. Katz's scale was built in 1952, and it was built for large or major step downs that happened in adults who were older or chronically ill. It was never designed for people with dementia. And that's why if you've come across Dr. Katz's scale, filling it out for the doctor or the hospital, you've realized your person doesn't seem to quite follow that track. And if they do make that jump from normal to the first step down, there's actually a tremendous amount of decline. And for years, this is one of the tools that's been used to determine if your loved one has dementia. So even though you, the spouse, or you, the son or daughter, or you, the caregiver, are watching your person change, we didn't have a tool that would accurately describe to the physician what's going on at home, even though this person sitting in front of me looks very well put together. Did that make sense, Glenda?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And you have to remember, when your loved one's in memory care, all we're doing for them are ADLs. We're not trying to regrow brain tissue. We're not trying to teach them new tricks. We are simply trying to get them through the activities of daily living throughout the day, over and over and over again. Think about how many times you go to toilet a day. We're trying to get them through those ADLs over and over and over again without anybody getting upset, especially the person with dementia. And if you're still doing care at home, also the person who's the caregiver. And so you just have to realize all day long, you're continuing to do these things for your loved one. It just that as the disease progresses, it becomes harder and harder to do these, because now you're having to do most of the work for ambulation or toileting or any of the other ADLs. Now, in 1969, Doctors Lawton and Brody created a second scale called the instrumental activities of daily living. The ADLs, Glenda, are what you and I learned from infants to about 8, 9, or 10, because it took us until we were 8, 9, or 10 years old before we could correctly and properly bathe. Then you begin to learn your instrumental activities of daily living. These are the things you learn as teenagers to young adults, and this is what allowed you to be successful as an adult in the world. For family caregivers, this is why when I meet you, when Glenda meets you, we automatically know you've been doing care for at least 10 years, because you very slowly begin to take over the instrumental activities of daily living. So you may have never been the driver before, and now you're the driver. You may have never done the laundry or food prep and food cleanup, and now you're in charge of shopping, food prep, cleanup, housework, everything. And it is this slow accumulation of work and taking care of the other person's needs that happens for at least 10 years before the real onset of trouble with ADLs help. And what it means is your person's brain is moving backwards in time because of brain damage due to the type of dementia that the person has. Did that make sense, Glenda?
It does indeed.
Okay. Now, in 1996, the Bristol Medical School in Bristol, England, put together the Bristol ADL scale for persons with dementia. It was built for persons with dementia. So when you as a family caregiver, as a professional caregiver, look at it, this is going to make a lot more sense to you, because this is actually designed for your loved one versus being designed for somebody who's chronically ill and otherwise doesn't match this criteria. They looked at the previous tools and did a combination of IADLs and ADLs. In 1996, that gives us a couple of decades. We've had to look at this and measure it. So the validity rating, how accurate it is, Glenda, is over 98%. So if the family can look at their person and grade them without still thinking they can do that thing, then the validity rating on it is very, very high. It gives the medical professional that's looking at your loved one a true picture of what's happening at home, which is much different than the picture I presented when I took Glenda all dressed up to her doctor. Because the reality is she couldn't do those things anymore. And I unintentionally did something that could have fooled the doctor. So the Bristol scale was invented. We've had it long enough to know that it works. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, food, when you look at your scale, and you can either Google the Bristol scale or it's in the tool section at the bottom of my website. It's an observational tool because all tools in dementia care are observational because folks have brain damage. And we can't ask a brain damaged person, do you select and prepare your own food? Because of course the answer is, well, yes, I absolutely do. When in reality, they can only prepare the food if I've already got it set out for them and I'm prompting them step by step by step. And by the time I'm doing that's an activity now rather than food preparation. And what I mean by that is in memory care, if they were to make, say, banana pudding, they would have a person putting vanilla wafers in a cup. They would have a person pouring milk with the pudding mix. They would have another person stirring it up and another person spooning it on top. And so step by step, the person's done those things. So it's not this huge step down. It's being able to do stuff, then being able to do stuff with assistance, then needing to be prompt step by step. And that's much different than the scales that you've seen before. Now I have some stuff in front of the screen, so I got to move it here. Now, in our field, eating is called feeding. And we have a lot of discussion about that because feeding is considered to be a more institutional word. And feeding is something we do to animals, whereas eating is something we do as humans. And so we're moving that word from feeding to eating, but you may still see it on some of the older scales. And the first one, the person can eat appropriately with the correct tools. Then they eat appropriately if the food is finger manageable or if they need to use a spoon. Then they move to finger food. Now they're at mechanically chopped. Now they're at pureed. And then it's not applicable because it either didn't exist or they're not at that stage yet. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So it's sequential.
Yeah. And so in the decline of your loved one, it is normal to go from regular food to, Glenda, I cut the food up just like they were a child. But then I go from cutting the food to where they can get it with the fork and take a bite to where I'm cutting it into finger foods. And finger foods mean I'm now cutting the meat, for example, into strips that they can pick up and eat with their hands. And if any of you are a parent, this is the same thing you did with children. We're just going backwards. From finger foods, we go to mechanically chopped. Mechanically chopped is not, I cut it up in little pieces, Glenda. It's that I put it in an onion chopper and chopped it because I'm doing what the back teeth should be doing because the person's brain is no longer signaling the mouth how to chew and swallow food properly. From mechanically chopped, we go to pureed. Now, if your loved one's in a community, I want you to understand their pureed meal is not leftovers from last night. Their pureed meal is supposed to be what we're having right now. We do not mix all the pureed foods together. That's just a nasty gray mass. I don't want to eat it and you don't want to eat it. We keep the foods separate. And one of the biggest issues about pureed foods, Glenda, nobody tests for seasoning. Think about the last time you took a bite of something and went, that needs salt. And you didn't take another bite till you went and got salt. So we have to taste and properly season food. And for those of you who are doing care at home, especially if your loved one's in stage 6, stage 7, which is bedbound, it takes an hour to properly assist a person with dementia in order to get them to eat their meal. Another thing is, Glenda, there cannot be music on while they're eating. The news, the TV doesn't need to be on. It needs to be quiet. Their brain is damaged and needs the environment to be as quiet as possible so that the brain can focus on the task of taking food into the mouth, being able to chew it and swallow it. So no music and no other sound is allowed. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm going to go to using pictures of children, but these next two slides, I had to use these people, and here's the reason why. As I was building this PowerPoint deck, Glenda, I put in older lady drinking, and I got a woman my age having a glass of milk. Made pretty good, right? I'm going to jump ahead. I put in older man drinking, got a guy with a beer. I don't know what's going on there. I think, fellas need to get together, talk to somebody at the internet. But the Bristol scale means a person can select and prepare the drink as required. Then they can prepare the drink if the ingredients are made available. So coffee, if I put the sugar and the cream out, they can still do it. Then they can do it if I remind them they like sugar, I remind them they like cream, and then they can't make the drink no matter what I do. Then with drinking comes being able to drink appropriately, meaning that, remember, as the brain is damaged, coordination is being affected. And so it's not unusual to see a person miss their mouth, pour the drink in their lap, pour the drink on themselves, because they can't get the coordinated movement to bring it here. But if I put a straw in or a sippy cup type of thing, then they can get it here and there's less chance of them spilling the drink. And using a straw, sucking is one of our primitive brain techniques. So we continue to be able to suck things. So using a straw might be helpful. Then it doesn't matter if I give them a straw or what I do, they're no longer able to use the sucking ability. And so now I'm having to give them drinks this way to where they're being fed. Now I have to move stuff around so I can move that slide. Now there's a 90-second rule and a 30-minute rule. The 90-second rule, Glenda, is 90 seconds after food goes into our body and we finish, something needs to come out. So we got about 90 seconds. We need to get somebody to the bathroom. About 30 minutes after we eat is when our bowels move. The colon is now compacted and now wants to evacuate. It is much easier to clean a person with dementia on the toilet than it is to not pay attention to signs that they need a bathroom and have to completely strip them and clean them. So pay attention to your 90-second rule and your 30-minute rule. The 90-second rule is usually I need to go and relieve my bladder. The 30-minute rule is typically a bowel movement. And most bowel movements in humans occur after they have a hot substance in the morning, which is coffee. We have coffee and we have to go to the bathroom. But you know your loved one best. Some people have a bowel movement every day like clockwork after coffee. Some people don't have a bowel movement until the afternoon. Some people have a bowel movement normally every 2 to 3 days. Some people have a bowel movement 2 to 3 times a day. Some people can become impacted because of new medications they're on. And so you always have to be aware of your loved one's toileting schedule and when was the last time they had a bowel movement, because impaction causes delirium, causes infection, has all sorts of bad outcomes. It's painful, it hurts, and you know your person best. So when they move to memory care, you've also got to let the staff know this is when they go to the toilet. These are their normal toileting routine. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay.
Now, the next one is the dehydration check. Now, most people, when I ask them, and I'm speaking at a conference, I'll ask them, how do you do a dehydration check? And they'll go pinch skin. This is what old white skin does. It doesn't, we don't pinch. I mean, after the age of 6, we're now losing collagen. You can't pinch us. So instead, you do a thumbprint check of the forehead. Now, Glenda, you don't do this to yourself. Oh. I'm in community. I can go through a table and in just 30 seconds tell you everybody at the table who needs more fluid that afternoon. So I wouldn't do this to myself. I would do it to you or to somebody with dementia if I wanted to see if they were dehydrated. But I've been only drinking coffee today. I've had no water so that you would be able to see what it is you're looking for in your loved one. So Glenda, I'm going to press firmly between the eyebrows, just above them and where a bunch of capillary blood vessels are. I'm going to push firmly so that I can feel the skull bone. I even put my hand in the back of the head to hold the head steady if I need to. I count to 5. When I reach 5, I'm going to jerk my thumb away. And if you can see a white circle where my thumb was, even for a flash, it means I need fluid. So look closely. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did you see it?
It was small and quick, but yeah, it was
And
there.
it's very quick. And the darker the skin is, the faster the flash is. But that's how you check an older person for dehydration. And you have to remember, not everybody likes water. Not everybody wants to drink 8 glasses of water a day. It can be anything that doesn't have caffeine, and you don't want caffeine because caffeine's a natural diuretic, and that's going to dehydrate your person, and they already have trouble with dehydration because of brain damage. So watermelon is 99% water. Jello is 99% water. Fruit juices, clear sodas or colored sodas like orange sodas, grape sodas, root beer, 7-Ups, Sprites, clear sodas, ginger ales don't have caffeine in them. So they can still have a soda. They can have decaf tea or decaf coffee, and then anything else you can get them to drink. And remember, this is what you're looking for. And the first thing I check on people is I check for pain and I check for dehydration. Those are indicators that there is something going on. Number 5 on the Bristol scale is dressing. And that means being able to select and choose appropriate clothing and being able to dress yourself. And this is one where families get mixed up. If your person can go into the room by themselves without prompting and knows they need to put on clothing for the day and that it needs to be fresh and it's put on correctly and it's buttoned correctly and tucked in and everything's done correctly, then they're doing number 5. But Glenda, if I'm having to tell that person to go get dressed, to tell them it's time to change, if I'm having to lay clothes out for them, then we've moved down a step. And this is one of the things I find that families simply don't realize that they're already helping. And what the Bristol scale does is it points out to you, you must be helping now. So you can either independently go and correctly put on clothing and clean clothing and correctly do it, or you're, as the caregiver, need to look at, are you at step number 2 or step number 3? In terms of dressing, when we are assisting with dressing, you have to think about it the way you do children. You didn't take care of your children by not talking to them and you just roughly dressed them and bent their little arms and moved them all around however you needed them. You praised them for each step. You used their name for each step. As a general rule of thumb, when I teach ADL care and we do dressing, I give 10 compliments just by putting on a sweater. Every single thing is a compliment. And I want to make sure that if I know this person is going to hurt when I touch them, that they've got arthritis in this shoulder, arthritis in this knee, I need to make sure that I mention, okay, we're going to move that shoulder now. I know that shoulder hurts. Ow, 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 ow. Okay, it's over. I'm so sorry. I had to hurt you. I'm so sorry that hurt. It's so critical that we apologize to people with dementia, especially because they don't understand why we're doing what we're doing and we just hurt them, but they still have the social skill to understand that we were upset, we hurt them, and we appropriately apologized. You need to remember that you dress your loved one for warmth. People with dementia are colder than you and I are because of brain damage. Their body temperature is actually lower than ours is. And then you want to make sure the clothes are soft, that they're warm, that the feel of them is something you would want to put on. And then you have to remember, as you're dressing, when you get older, you become friends with people named arthritis and bursitis and tendonitis and a broken bone and a joint that doesn't work right. And if you have arthritis or if you just have aging, joints gel in the night. And we tend to get dressed in the morning. So you may have to give your loved one a few stretches, a few moments, a few movements before they can ungel enough that it doesn't hurt to get dressed. That makes sense, Glenda?
Yes, I'm living some of that. Thank you so much.
Every time I do that gelled part, I think about how many steps it takes me before I'm finally standing up straight and walking.
Exactly.
And hygiene, it's a person's ability to wash regularly and independently. And Glenda, I can't tell you how many times a family member has said, oh yeah, he takes a shower. And I ask, when was the last time you washed a towel? And you can sort of see the light bulb go off that he's going in there and doing part of it. He knows to go in there and turn stuff on. He's supposed to turn stuff on, but that doesn't mean he knows all the other 47 steps to take to be able to properly bathe. So your person goes from being able to bathe to can bathe with a setup. You've got everything in there ready for them, to being bathed if you prompt them and supervise them while they're bathing to where the person cannot wash themselves. Other things about grooming is that grooming isn't just brushing teeth. And that's the most common thing I'm told by professional staff, is that grooming is simply brushing teeth, and it's not. It's hair care, ear care, hand care, nail care. For ladies, it's makeup. For fellas, it's shaving, dentures, glasses, hearing aids, deodorant, colognes, hair gel. I mean, just think about all the things that are in your bathroom. And then while you're thinking about toothpaste, think about how many tubes look just like toothpaste, and how you have to be aware and alert for things like that, or your person will use the wrong thing to brush their teeth with. Also, it's common for people with dementia to complain about toothpaste, that it burns their mouth. When that happens, you simply move your loved one to children's toothpaste, because it's super, super sweet. And even if they eat the whole tube, it doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt them. Tips are for a proper shave. And this one I think is really important for the fellas. Use a warm washcloth to get the face prepared and to soothe him. Men, the barber shops used to do all this. A lot of men I know still go to barber shops that do a shave for them, or as part of the haircut, use a warm cloth on their face. It feels wonderful. Makeup is always going to be to make her look her best, although you have to understand sometimes, because ladies can't see, they may be using really bright colors that are a little more shocking than what they would have normally done, but that's just because they're not seeing correctly. When I look in a community to see if they're doing good care, I look, are the ears clean? Is the nose clean? Is the hair clean? Are the fingernails clean? Are the hands clean? And remember, on nails, in a community, only the RN can cut your loved one's nails if they're diabetic. The staff, the activity staff, can still do nail care. They can color, paint, not color and paint, but they can paint the nails. They can file the nails, but they cannot cut the nails on a person who's diabetic. That's only done by a podiatrist or by the RN. You've got to remember that other things include belts, shoes, socks, scarves, and eventually belts and scarves will go away as we move to keeping the person into more comfortable items like sweatpants that don't require a belt. When you dry skin on your loved one, you pat skin dry. If you're over the age of 50, you should be patting your skin dry after a bath or shower, not rubbing it. Skin is gradually becoming thinner and thinner. Use a nice lotion for the skin. And when you start the touch on your loved one, you don't just put your hand on them and start rubbing. It causes a human startle reaction. You start with the fingertips and then move the palm of your hand into the rub. And that's less startling for humans, especially for a person with dementia. Having to move my clicker all around. Glenda, do you love this picture?
Yeah, I do. I like it a lot.
I picked it because of his nose hair. Teeth means being able to clean your own teeth or your own dentures and use them, put them back in appropriately. Then cleaning, if given the appropriate items, whether it's denture cleaner and the cup, or whether it's toothbrush and toothpaste, to the person needs assistance, to the person needs full assistance. Now, Glenda, assistance starts in every ADL with hand under hand care. And so this is the hand of me, the person with dementia. This is the hand of my caregiver. My caregiver always puts their hand under my hand because my brain is used to seeing my hand come. It's not used to seeing this other one. Beginning where I require assistance, there's a point where I require assistance to get started on that thing, eating or brushing my teeth or combing or washing. But once you get the motion going, the caregiver can take their hand away and the memory in my brain will take over and continue to do this. As time goes on and there is more brain damage, you're still going to use my hand for as long as possible over the caregiver's hand, and you'll continue to use my hand as part of the brushing. It's just that you're actually now doing it, and you won't be removing your hand until we're done with brushing teeth. Did that make sense, Glenda?
Yeah. Strange. I've never thought of that. And I don't think in all the years, I don't think I've heard you say that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's always their hand on top, your hand underneath. And if it was food, I would be using this to get them started. And for several months, this may work. This may only work for several weeks until finally their hands on top of mine, but I'm still the one feeding them. And bath and shower, this is our most complex ADL. It's more than 48 steps to be able to take a bath or shower. It took us years to learn all of these steps and to be able to do it appropriately. This is got some primitive brain response in there, like getting wet means getting cold, and wet and cold means sick, and wet and cold and sick mean death. So there's maybe some of that primitive brain stuff. A shower that feels very invigorating to you, Glenda, may feel like 1,000 stinging bees to a person with dementia. And I've actually stayed in hotels where the water pressure felt like that. And my first thought is always wonder what a dementia person would feel. And then showers and bathing are more difficult because it's intimate care that's now being required. And these are areas of the body that you and I have been taught all our lives not to let strangers touch. You may be from a family that's extremely modest. And so this can be very difficult for you to do. So we have things called modesty robes. It's a terry cloth robe that covers the person in the front and the back, but the sides are open to allow the caregiver to do care. And yes, the robe's going to get wet in the shower, but it's easier to do that than to have the person so full of anxiety because they're naked in front of someone. And even if it's somebody they've been married to for 50 years, that does not mean that the husband or the wife recognize their spouse as who their spouse actually is. To them, it can easily look like I'm 30 and a much older person is trying to bathe me. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your loved one goes from being able to bathe regularly, independently, they know they need a bath, they know how to find the bath, to needing the bath or the shower started for them, to needing supervision and prompting, and then finally they're totally dependent. Now, what is the purpose of bathing, do you think?
Well, you would automatically say to get your body clean.
To clean skin. Is there a rule that says to clean skin, I must spray you with water or dunk you down in bubbly water?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And are the people that we're talking about out working on the highway? Are they out farming in the field?
Nope.
How dirty are they? So if the best you can do today as a caregiver is wash an arm, wash an arm. It's okay. But if we use warm washcloths, we have a greater chance of getting keeping hands and feet clean. Those are very important. And having a washcloth to wash the face is certainly something this generation is more familiar with than the current generation of young people. So remember, the purpose is to get skin clean. It's not to terrify someone. All we're trying to do is clean skin. And however you can accomplish that today, however much you can do is good. So there's some tips, Glenda. For one thing, stop talking about what you're fixing to do. Young caregivers, new caregivers will go, how about a bath? Glenda, you want a bath? How about a bath? Bath is fun. Bath is good. Come on, Glenda, let's take a bath. Bath, 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 bath. And you're agreeing with me because all you know is I'm talking to you and I'm smiling and I seem real happy. So you keep agreeing until we get down to that place where the bath is. And then all of a sudden you're like, that's not what you signed up for. The room has to be warm. You're fixing to take someone's clothes off. How would that feel to you? Well, you and I go, oh, it's cold. And we hop in that nice hot shower, but your person's moving much slower. They're not undressing themselves. You may be doing that. And so it's a different reaction. So you got to have the room super warm. You got to have everything ready. You cannot get your person into the bathroom, get them half undressed and go, wait right here. I'll be right back. You'll come back. They'll be going down the road. Use modesty robes, use towels. Remember that you are doing intimate care. And because you're doing intimate care, you can do things to distract your loved one. I can tell you in professional care, we sing Jesus Loves Me, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and Happy Birthday to Me over and over and over again. And they're all the same melodies. It's the same words. We just do them over and over again. But by distracting her by singing, I have a much less chance of a catastrophic reaction because she's not so focused on what I'm doing to her. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Toileting means being able to toilet when required and using the toilet correctly. Then is needing to be taken to the toilet and assisted. Then incontinent of urine and feces. In most dementias, stage 5 is when a person becomes incontinent of bladder, and stage 6 is where they become incontinent of bowel. But in vascular dementias especially, we may see a person who becomes incontinent of bowel in stage 5 and doesn't become incontinent of bladder until later. But as a normal course, that's what we expect. So this is, again, a very complex ADL. You have to first recognize your bladder or bowel are full, and then you have to know where the bathroom is. You have to get your clothing off. You have to avoid and clean yourself. You have to use the toilet correctly. You have to flush the toilet correctly. Then you have to put everything back on and go back to doing what you were doing before. So it's actually very complex. And I don't know this, but bathrooms can be places where people go to the bathroom and they're in there for an hour because they're doing something else. They're reading or they're doing crosswords. I've seen everything in the world being done, but it's whatever makes your person happiest. Remember, as tips, people are modest. You may have been married to someone for 40 years and you've never heard them pass gas. Or you may have been married to someone for 40 years and every time he passed gas at night, he made sure that your head was under the covers. I mean, you just never know. Men seem to like those scatological things. Remember that you're doing intimate care. So things like talking, singing, running water help mask what the person is releasing from their body. And as we've moved away from outhouses, away from the Great Depression and the war, where we might have all slept in the same bedroom or shared the same bed with one another, as people became more and more isolated, as families became smaller, that body function noise can make someone very, very embarrassed. So run water, talk, distract them with music, and then always remember your 90-second rule, your 30-minute rule. Transferring is one of the first things. It's the first major developmental milestone of an infant. And the day it happened on your child, you called your mother to tell them that the baby had turned over. That's the first milestone, and it means their brain is developing correctly. To us, it means being able to get in and out of a chair unaided, can get in the chair, but needs help to get out of the chair, needs help getting in or out of the chair. And finally is totally dependent, is what is considered a 1-person or a 2-person lift to get in and out of their bed or in and out of their chair. Transfer means that we go from lying down to turning the body to sitting up in bed to standing at the bed and to being able to stand or to stand from a sitting position. For transfer tips, I don't care what your loved one looks like. If you're listening to us, your person is frail and fragile. They just don't look sick yet. Remember, people with dementia are 6 times more likely to break their bones than normal aging elderly. So even though they don't begin to lose weight until stage 6, that does not mean stage 5, stage 4 people are not fragile and frail. They are like fine glass. When you're doing anything with your loved one, always tell them what you're about to do. Always use their name. Always do a count. Remember that older bodies hurt. Right now, when I talk to you, my left hip hurts so badly. And I only have arthritis in that hip. And it hurt so badly yesterday, Glenda, I actually just gave up and started crying. You and I have been taught all our life to suppress pain, suppress pain, suppress pain. And sometimes you actually let yourself feel it and it hurts. Now, I'm 62, so I'm in my 7th decade of life. What do you think you're going to feel like in your 8th decade, in your 9th decade, and in your 90s, you're in your 10th decade of life? Every decade gives you another level of pain. So remember, it can hurt to move. Just the most basic moves can hurt. So be gentle, use their name, give them lots of prompts and lots of praise. I'm much more likely to do something for you if you're the sweet person. Mobility is what we would have called ambulation. The person can walk independently, then they can walk with an assist. And Glenda, I can't tell you how many homes I've been in where a family caregiver was smart enough to move the couch so that their loved one could use the couch as a support all the way through the living room. So people may rearrange furniture or use the arms of chairs or the backs of couches for support. Then the person needs an aid such as a walker, a cane, a walking stick. a wheelchair, and then finally they're not able to walk. Now, Glenda, again, this isn't because they need physical therapy, and this isn't because they're not trying. It's because this part of the brain doesn't exist anymore. And without that part of the brain, you can't walk, period. It's not anything being done on purpose. It's brain damage. So sometimes when you're building slides, they shift and change before you get them up there. So what this says for mobility tips is to go slowly. Bones hurt, joints hurt. Bones creak. I moved my neck yesterday, Glenda, and it went pop, 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 pop. And I thought, I don't think it's supposed to do that. Remember that joints have gelled. Remember the brain is damaged. Be gentle. Remember that she can't see or hear you well. Women especially can be more combative because we've been given the message all our life not to let people touch us. So remember, use your social skills. You and I have a 3-pound brain. Use your social skills. Apologize if you hurt someone. Move on. And if they're still upset about it, apologize again. Orientation means that they're fully oriented to time, date, and place. They know who they are, where they are, and why they are. Then they're unaware of time or date, but they're not really concerned about it. Then they begin to repeatedly ask for the time or date. Then they begin to mix up day and night. And that's much different than any category in the ADLs or the IADLs. So you see where the Bristol scale is giving the doctor a whole new set of information right here. And it doesn't mean that your loved one is going to follow all of these by declining at the same level for each one of the activities in the Bristol scale. You may have someone that's already mixing up day and night, but they're still very mobile and ambulatory. Well, the mixing up day and night is an indicator of a type of dementia. So the staging tool is going to give your doctor information about what's going on at home. Orientation to space means that I'm fully oriented to my surroundings. Then I'm only oriented to familiar surroundings. And Glenda, what happens here is the family member starts talking about the need to move to memory care or to assisted living. And the person will tell you, I don't want to move, I don't want to move, I don't want to move. And it's because they're only oriented to those surroundings. Then if you put cameras up, you would notice that they're getting lost in their own home, and they actually begin to make their space smaller to where they're only using the kitchen area, a bathroom, a bedroom, wherever there's a television. They're only in that smaller area. So even if it was a 5,000 square foot house, they're now using only 200 feet of it or so. They begin to get lost in the home. They need reminding of where things are, and then they don't recognize the home, and they really, really want to leave and go to their own home. And what families typically don't realize is that's now a very late stage person, and they don't mean a physical home. They're now like the child who came to spend the night with you, and they loved you until 8:01, and at 8:01 that night, they wanted to go home. Now, Glenda, you know, I never took anybody home because of where I live. It'd be a 4-hour drive, and I'm not.
For sure.
These are identical twins. Aren't they cute? Communication is the ability to hold an appropriate conversation, to follow along with what we're going. And we're doing conversation that's so complex that I stop at every slide and ask Glenda if I'm even making sense. Then showing an understanding and attempting to respond verbally or with gestures that they're following the conversation. And Glenda, a lot of families get lost here because there's a polite chuckle that human beings do when they're lost in a conversation, and people with dementia do it. And I have met families who thought that that chuckle meant dad understood what we were talking about, and that chuckle was actually an indicator that he was lost in the conversation, but he was socially filling in. When they would look for him to an answer, he was socially filling in with a little chuckle, and they just thought that meant dad was funny. The person can make themselves understood, but they have difficulty understanding and translating words, language, and sound that's coming towards them. And then they don't respond or communicate with others. But do remember that about 90% of our communication is done through body language and my pitch and tone of voice. So if I'm right up in someone's face, I'm got to make sure that my face looks happy and that I'm smiling. If I'm elevating my voice, Glenda, I have to make sure I'm elevating my voice but smiling. Normally, when we elevate our voice, our face takes on an angrier look because a person with dementia can interpret my elevation of voice to try to help them understand what I'm saying as an indicator I'm about to do something to them, and they might defend themselves. So just be aware, communication continues even to the end of life. It's just that we're going to be the ones doing the talking, using their first name, and they recognize our tone and pitch of voice the same way a child does. Now, you begin to see some of the things folded in from the Lawton-Brody scale, being able to use a telephone. Now, Glenda, this scale was designed in 1996. In 2007, we got the cell phone, and we got a remote control because in 2007, big flat screen TVs became affordable. So telephone is also viewed as computer and the ability to use a clicker. So you can do it first as telephone and then do it secondly as a computer. So being able to use the telephone correctly, including dial the correct number. And you and I don't even dial numbers anymore, Glenda. I just look you up and press your name. I press where Glenda's picture is. Then can use the telephone if the number is given to them verbally, can answer the phone but won't make a call. And this is where a lot of families have issues, Glenda, because the adult child that lives out of state calls and mom talks to him on the phone, and all they really have is a social conversation of, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Oh, I'm fine. How's work? Work is fine. How was your day? My day was fine. How's your weather? My weather is fine. How's your weather? My weather's fine. You, the caregiver, see that mama hung up the phone and had no idea who she was talking to. Your sister calls you back to chew you out because she just talked to mama, and there's nothing wrong with mama. She knows that because mama's just fine. And she has no idea that mama doesn't even know she answered the phone. And then the person is not able to use the phone at all because it no longer makes sense to them. And it would be the same thing with the computer and with the clicker. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you know, I think about the old phones. I was at a play and they were using the old dial phone, and heaven forbid, they probably would never be able to figure that one out.
Well, and the crank phone.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's way back.
people don't realize in rural areas in West Texas, for example, the original phone lines were fences. They AT&T or Ma Bell hooked up wires to the fences, and that's how they got telephone signal out to people. So in Green Acres, when he would climb up on that telephone pole, and I grew up in the country, we thought that was so ridiculously funny. That wasn't that far off from reality.
For
So
sure.
housework or gardening, gardening is considered spiritual. Housework, it may be, but not for me. But able to do it to previous standards. And Glenda, a lot of times this is what I tell families to look for. This is what families call me and tell me they notice, that the yard is messy and it's never been messy, or the house is dirty and dusty and mama never kept a dirty house. Daddy always put everything up. And then they can do the work, but it's not to the previous standards. And one of the ways that you see this, Glenda, is we get into a holiday, you get to mom's house, she made her pumpkin pie, but she used salt instead of sugar. So still baking, but not baking correctly. And then limited participation. If I'm standing there helping, she can do it. If I give her the cloth to wipe the table, she can wipe the table, but then doesn't even seem to notice that anything is going on around her. And that's just the continuation and decline of the disease. Shopping is being able to shop to previous standards, then only able to shop for one or two items without a list, then can't shop alone, but can participate when accompanied. And this is why so many memory care communities have a shopping day where they use the company van and they take their residents that are still able to do shopping out to shop. And they're with them and they're watching them the whole time. And they're only getting one or two items. And then finally, the person is not able to do that and be part of it. Finances is being responsible for own finances. And I cannot underscore to you enough how you have to take care of finances, or a person with dementia will lose every bit of money that you have. They go from being responsible for finances at the previous level, then not able to complete a check, but can sign their name and recognizes that money has a value, then can sign their name and doesn't recognize money has a value. Glenda, I could keep you awake for hours with the stories I know of people with dementia who gave away millions of dollars because they didn't understand the value of money. And most of the time they gave that money away, not to complete strangers, but to derelict family members who knew enough to ask for money and that the person didn't understand it and they'd give it to them. So you really, really have to get your loved one off the computer. You have to tell them the computer's broken. You have to change the passwords. If you have to, leave them a little bit of money in the bank account and move the main money to another bank account that they don't have access to, because you've got to protect your finances and your assets. And a person with dementia, without meaning to, will get rid of all of those. For things you need to be aware of, and Glenda, this has happened more than once that I'm aware of. I'm sure it happens more routinely, but a family contacted me because the daughter had always taken care of the mother. The mother and her had lived together for 40 years. The dad had died. Mom and dad had both lived with her. And then all of a sudden, while she was at work one day, a brother from another state showed up, loaded mom up, closed mom's bank accounts, took mom to another state, filed a lawsuit against the sister, and is suing for everything they can sue for. And the mother doesn't understand at all why she's no longer with her daughter, but she's very, very frightened. And now this case is in front of the courts in 2 different states because the son is suing in one state and the daughter is suing in another. And the mother has very clearly said, I want to move back to where my home is. But there is money involved. And Glenda, I've seen people have a knockdown, drag out brawl over a 25-cent nameplate. When you add money in, people get very different. People that you thought you knew and trusted can get very different. So remember that your loved one can re-sign a legal document. And if you don't have them documented as having dementia, then they can do this and the other person can end up with assets. They give assets away to strangers or bad people. And there are people who prey on our elderly, and it's not always strangers. Most of the times something bad happens to your family member, it's from another family member. Now, my grandmother did not have dementia, Glenda, but as she got near to the end of life, and I knew she was actively dying, she began to insist that she wanted to buy me a vehicle. And I kept insisting, you can't buy me a vehicle because my mother and her twin sisters will kill me dead. That because you're using your money to buy me a vehicle and I'm perfectly capable of buying my own vehicle. So even a person without dementia may try to do something, and you just need to be aware of it because it's a lot of money for what everything costs now. Games and hobbies means being able to participate in pastimes to the previous levels, then can participate but needs supervision. Then it takes you a lot of coaxing to get them to join in, but then they can join in and then they're no longer willing or able to. And I always think of this as dominoes. Around people with dementia, they have sadly told me I'm the worst player they've ever known. My job is to lose. But we go from being able to shuffle, draw the appropriate number of dominoes and match 5s to 5s. And then you notice suddenly they're now matching 3s to 3s and 2s to 2s and any double to any double. And the domino trail is beginning to go off in all different directions. And then they can still shuffle, but they don't know how to draw their dominoes or to the number to draw or what they're supposed to do with them. And so you're just gradually helping more and more and more. And that is the opposite of what you've seen your loved one do. And it may remind you more of what you did with children as you begin to teach them a game. The disease is now causing that memory to go backwards. 20 is transport, and you got to get the keys away. Some states in the U.S., once a dementia diagnosis is given, the doctor notifies the Department of Public Safety, and the person gets a letter in the mail saying your driver's license is no longer valid. Other places, the doctor is just not going to tell them anything's wrong. So they'll tell them they can go to a special hospital program, and that program will check them and tell them whether they're safe to drive. And then families very foolishly believe he knows to only drive over to there and then to come back. And no, he doesn't. You're dealing with somebody who has brain damage. So in the beginning, it means the person can drive, cycle, or use public transportation. And Glenda, the word cycle in there is how you know this was done in Britain. We don't have a whole lot of elderly people who cycle in the United States. That has not been part of our transportation history until the generation that will age with me. Then being unable to drive, but can still use public transportation. then being unable to use public transportation alone and won't even go if they're accompanied. Now, tools for your health are, and these are things that I do, these are things that are helpful for you, self-compassion.org. This is Dr. Kristen Neff's website. She's a professor at the University of Texas. She is one of the gurus of self-compassion. And Glenda, you know me, you know I'm a bit of a competitive person. When I scrolled down on her first page of her website and I scrolled down to the test section, the scores are from 1 to 5. I was pretty sure I'd get a 5 because I'm a 5. And I scored a 1.2. And what was helpful was it said to me, you're great at helping other people, but you're not taking care of you. And then it actually told me each of the 5 specific areas where I was not being good to myself. So you've got to take care of you and be good to you. On YouTube, and I love YouTube because it's free, use the mindful movement. The mindful movement is a meditation site, and Sarah Rayburn can either give you a 1 to 5 to 7 hour nighttime meditation to help you sleep, and trust me, that woman will talk you to sleep, or it's a 15-20 minute morning meditation, just make you feel good. In all honesty, I listen to it while I'm doing makeup when I'm traveling, is when I'm listening to mindful movement in the morning. Deepak Chopra is a physician who is considered a guru of meditation. You can go to his website, give him money, and do meditation there. Or you can go to YouTube, where he's got like 400 free meditations on YouTube. Therapy in a Nutshell is on YouTube. This is a licensed counselor from Utah, and she does wonderful 10 to 20 minute nuggets of therapy. Why, if you're feeling anxiety, what your brain is doing and what you can do to rebalance your brain. She's got a few hundred videos up that you can watch. She does workshops. She does all kinds of stuff. You can find me. You can find me and Glenda. We're all over YouTube. We would love to have you come and watch us. And then in the tool section on my website, I want you to do these tests for yourself, and these tests need to go to your physician as the family caregiver, because we've got to take care of you. Zaret's Burden Interview measures how high your stress level is, and any score above 40 means you should be talking to your physician. The Geriatric Depression Scale has a 98% validity rating. It measures whether or not you have depression. And if you're on an antidepressant and you score 5 or more on this test, your antidepressant isn't working. You need medication adjustments. The Caregiver Grief Inventory is because as a family caregiver, you're already grieving for your loved one as though they had died, because the person you knew is gone. Hamilton Anxiety Scale, you use that both for your loved one and for yourself to measure and see what your anxiety levels are. Now, Glenda, one of the biggest things I hear from families is, I don't want any medication. I don't want depression or anxiety medication. That just make me goofy. No, it doesn't. And what we know is, as you do this journey, chemical imbalance begins to occur in your brain. And we know that if you go 10 years with untreated depression, you will develop Alzheimer's dementia. And we know anxiety increases cortisol in your brain, and that leads to cardiovascular issues. So these are things that we can correct. The doctor can correct for you. The average family caregiver is on this medication 6 months to 2 years before their brain chemistry corrects itself from the journey that you've been through. This has not been an easy thing that you've done. Tools for others that are involved in care: your doctor needs to see the filled out Bristol ADL scale. This gives a true picture of what's going on at home. The Cornell scale for depression and dementia. And Glenda, I don't care if your loved one's already on an antidepressant, do the Cornell scale. If they score, the antidepressant's not working. Pain ad, 50% of the behaviors in dementia are untreated chronic pain. And Glenda, even a 1 is pain. I don't want a 1. People, as they age, you lose your fear of dying. So the fear is not the fear of dying, Glenda, it's the fear of dying in pain. And we can treat pain. So you, the caregiver, every 3 months will have to go to your doctor and make sure that their pain medicine is daily routine, and gets replenished. You don't hurt with arthritis occasionally, and it hurts every single day. It's just that some days it hurts more. In some of the states, it's illegal to prescribe a PRN medicine for a person with dementia because PRN doesn't mean as needed. It means I have a 3-pound brain. I know Glenda's my nurse. I know when my hip starts hurting, I need to go find Glenda, my nurse, and get my medicine. Your loved one doesn't have a 3-pound brain, so how in the world would they ever tell somebody they're hurting? So use your pain ad. The brief psychiatric rating scale is what your doctor's doing in their head to determine if your loved one needs an antipsychotic. And what you may do when you read it is realize your loved one does need an antipsychotic medication. And the way to think about antipsychotic medications is we can either let your person be like this the rest of their life, or you can let a geri-psych doctor medicate them and keep them as close to who they were for the remainder of life. Hamilton Anxiety Scale is used, and the Dementia Behavioral Assessment Tool is what allows you to stage your loved one to understand how progressed the dementia is, how much brain tissue is missing, how long this stage is expected to last, and what their mental equivalency is. So a stage 5 person has lost 0.5 pound of brain tissue. Their beginning equivalency is a 12-year-old. By the end of stage 5, a 4-year-old. A person in stage 6 has lost 1 pound of brain tissue. Their mental equivalency is a 4-year-old to a 2-year-old. A stage 7 is a bedbound person. They have the equivalency of an infant. Mm-hmm. Now, there's 4 tips for bedtime. Number 1, you got to get the bladder empty. So what happens is you set your person on the toilet, Glenda, you heard them pee, and you thought their bladder was empty because you didn't realize older bladders are folded bladders. They're no longer springy. We need the bladder to empty. So step number 1, we're going to go take the person and let them pee. Then we're going to brush their teeth. Water in the mouth signals the bladder. And then we're going to wash the face and the hands because the touch, the feel, and the sound of water continue to alert the bladder that it needs to squeeze again and empty. So back to the toilet we go. We leave the water running in the sink, give the folded bladder a moment, and the person should evacuate their bladder again, which means their bladder is now empty, which means that few extra minutes of care means your person's got between 4 and 6 hours before their bladder will refill, which means they can get halfway through the night before they need to be toileted. Number 2, wash the feet. Washing the feet not only goes back to biblical times, but also to the time where your loved one was growing up. Mama didn't have automatic washing machines. We didn't wash clothes every single day. Monday was wash day. And stuff wasn't going to get washed again for another week. So you were not putting your dirty little body on mama's sheets. So the last thing that was done at night was a warm washcloth was used to wash the feet. Now, the warm washcloth does a couple of things. It lets you check feet, lets you make sure you're getting toes clean. A warm washcloth feels wonderful. Cold washcloth will get you kicked in the teeth, Glenda. Warm washcloth is what you want. It's a very relaxing thing, and it is a total act of love. And if you've never done it for yourself, I encourage you to remember to do it tonight. Number 3 is bedtime prayers. Bedtime prayers are a moment of calm that say our day is over. It's an old memory of safety and peace. It's a connection to God or a higher power or whatever your spiritual belief is. And it means that the day's final care is now completed. Now, there's a magic phrase at the end of prayers. And the only rule about prayers, Glenda, in a community is I can't try to change your religion. But once I know what your basic nighttime prayer was, I can do the prayer with you. And I may say the prayer and you may repeat it. I may listen while you say the prayer. I may say a line and you say a line. I say a line and you say a line. At the end, we say amen. And then the magic phrase is good night. I'll see you in the morning. Now, for a professional caregiver, I'm not actually coming back in the morning. My shift's in the evening. But what that phrase means to the person with dementia is go to sleep. Do not get out of bed. All is well. You are safe. You tuck the person in, and you should be good for most of the rest of the night. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it.
Well, I had put in the chat boxes that I was going to ask you what your timeline looks like to see if we can continue.
Oh, sure.
But looking at the clock, I know we're continuing. So Let me go up. We have so many questions, Tam, and people have been patiently waiting. So let me start at the very beginning. Um, okay, Meredith, how do you know when it's time to transition from assisted living to memory care? My mother has been, I'm not quite understanding since forgotten the meal schedule, what day it is to get her hair done, needs constant cues, ask why she is there, where she is. So
That's
she should be
memory
looking
care.
at memory care.
Yeah. If you just do your dementia behavioral assessment tool, she's displaying stage 5 behaviors, and that would be memory care. If you leave a stage 5 person in assisted living, they actually begin to be picked on by the residents who have not declined as much as they are, and they'll end up not coming out of their room at all. But she's giving you indicators that it's time for memory care.
Thank you, Tam. Peggy asked, my husband was diagnosed with FTD semantic variety at IU Neurology in the last year. He has developed REM sleep disorder, which is usually a Lewy body thing. He's taking 20 milligrams of melatonin and 1.5 milligrams of clozapam, but these do not seem to be working. What should I do?
Well, melatonin, if it's over the counter, has been highly cautioned against, because when the FDA did a test on it, I could be taking a pill out of a bottle of melatonin and it actually has triple the amount it's supposed to. And Glenda, you could be taking a pill out of that same bottle and it's got little to no trace of melatonin.
Wow.
It's normal in dementia that people have different stages in the disease where their medication gets looked at and recalculated or tweaked, or another medication may be added. So I would go to the doctor, and I wouldn't rule out Lewy bodies. I would go to lbda.org and look to see if you're seeing any other symptoms of Lewy bodies, because REM sleep behavior disorder could be occurring from some cardiovascular event or something else going on in the brain. But I would look at the Lewy body website to see if I'm seeing any of these other things that are common in Lewy bodies with your loved one. You can also go to nih.gov and look up the Lewy body dementia handbook, and you can order a handbook or you can print one out. They're about 40 pages long, I think, but it's one of the best books on Lewy bodies. But you need to let your doctor know these things aren't working, and educate yourself on Lewy body in case you have to argue that I'm also seeing Lewy body, because people certainly do have more forms of dementia.
We are working. Okay, we are working with a psychiatrist on the medications, and
is it a Jerry psychiatrist?
Well, she just works with our neurologist. I don't know if she's.
It should be a geriatric psychiatrist because it's a different field.
Probably not. I mean, she just works with the neurologist that we work with, and
it has to be a neurologist who specializes in dementia and a geri psych doctor.
Okay,
those are two specific fields that are
we're
different.
in the 14th year of since his diagnosis, and he's still very, like, he's outside right now walking. I can see him, but we have a fenced-in yard, and that's something he does when he gets up from his nap. But he's very, like, he's incontinent, all the things. But I even had a hospice person come out, and they said he didn't qualify because he's too good a physical shape. But this yelling at night is about to drive me insane. Because in that REM disorder, every time he's in his REM sleep, he's screaming like he's in terrible pain. But if you wake him up, are you okay? Do you hurt? No. Are you okay? Yes.
Well, you can't. Okay. So you can't ask a person with brain damage questions. Their brain is damaged. So instead, you use the tools that are on the website to determine. I never ask a person with dementia if they're in pain. I listen to the scream. If the scream has pain in it, I'm looking at my pain ad. So look at your pain scale for your dad and see if you're noticing anything in there. And how old is he?
Oh, it's my husband. He is
your husband.
He's 65, but he got diagnosed when he was like 52.
Yeah. He was diagnosed so early, it should be really starting to speed up now. But I would look at your pain assessment scale, and then he may be having a night terror reaction to medication. So there are some dementia medications that like Aricept, Residine, Exelon, the generic forms of those and the original forms. Some of those cause night terrors in people, and a night terror would look like REM, sleep behavior disorder. REM sleep behavior disorder is, ma'am, REM sleep, ma'am, please don't interrupt. REM sleep behavior disorder is kicking and punching in the night. Screaming sounds more like night terrors or pain. So try to sort of watch them and see what are you seeing. If you're not so exhausted, you may be passed out and can't stay awake. But if you can, look to see if he's kicking and punching in his sleep, because that's REM sleep behavior disorder. Mm-hmm. Screaming in the sleep might be more of a night terror related to a drug interaction.
He doesn't take any Aricept or anything like that, but he does move, because every morning his mattress is about a quarter of the way off the bed frame. So he's moving a lot.
I would definitely talk to the Jerry psych or to the psych person and let them know that, because they're going to try to, and look at Lewy bodies first, so that you go in there as armed with information as you can, because they may not understand different dementias join different dementias.
Right.
Okay. And they may not be aware that Lewy body and Parkinson's in rare forms also have an FTD component. And so frontal temporal dementias can also develop Lewy body or Parkinson's dementias. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And
so
the neurologist has said they could be coming together, like because he's so advanced that he could be getting other types of dementia. So
absolutely.
They're aware of that, but it's just, I don't know, it's hard to deal with. And he doesn't qualify for a traditional nursing home because he's so ambulatory. And they said he has to be in a lockdown unit, a memory unit, lockdown. And most of those are private pay only in Kentucky.
Well, every nursing home I know has a memory care unit. Are you not finding one there in their nursing?
I found one and they're full. I mean, I don't live in a large.
Get his name. Yeah, get his name on the waiting list.
Yeah.
And all they'll do is they'll call you, and if it's time, you'll say yes, we'll take that spot. And if it's not, you can say give us, move us one down.
Yeah,
he's get on the waiting list.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
Thank you, Peggy. Appreciate your questions.
And Peggy, that's so extremely rare. And oh my God, what a fella you've got that he has been diagnosed and is still with us. That is a tough dementia. We don't normally see people live this long with it. So wow. God bless you. You are a good wife. Good wife. It's also normal, Peggy, that if he were in a memory care unit, we would reach a point where we would put his bed on the floor. So that if he's moving that much, to keep him from falling out of bed, we actually put the mattress on the floor, so that if he falls, he only falls a few inches. Okay. And then holler if there's anything else we can do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
You hang in there, Kentucky. Hang in there, Kentucky.
Really. We had gotten an email from Nancy, and so I had to ask her if she had a specific question. Basically, her situation is that she's been married to her husband for 27 years, and he has children, and they don't seem to be as concerned, engaged in the care of their father. And Nancy wanted to know if there was anything that she could do, or should she just let go of all of that and just realize she's going to be doing this on her own?
More than likely, and you can ask other families that are on the call, because you're probably not the only one that's dealing with stepchildren. But our finding with people is, if you'll do the work, there's no reason for me to interfere with my life. And you can always have family dynamics because of how you became the second spouse or the step spouse. And it can be, for a long time, and Glenda will tell you this, I would argue that, they're not in denial, they just need education. It turns out from research, there are people that are in denial about what's going on with their loved one right in front of them. So you could try educating them. You can try filling out the Bristol scale, having the doctor look at it and then send it to them to try to keep them a part of the process. But you just may sadly have stepchildren who are not going to do anything because you're there to do it. So why would they?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's all. I mean, every caregiver on here, our friend in Kentucky can tell you it's tough. It's really tough. And I feel for y'all that are trying to get family members, even it doesn't have to be stepchildren. I mean, families that have been married for 50 years will tell you the same thing of children that do not seem to realize I need help. Now, part of that can be that you're not asking for help. You're not telling him, they're telling the children, this is what you're going to do. And so a lot of us are, for me, we're scared of our parents. Our parents are still our parents. And if they tell us to do something, we do it. But if nobody knows you need help, they may not be doing it. And then for some of you, you may have said, I need help, and they still won't help. And that just means that they're teaching their children a very valuable lesson about what to do with them if something happens. You're teaching your children a completely different lesson. So some of you may find yourselves being the sole caregiver. I urge you to make sure your financial paperwork is in order, your legal documentation is in order, so that nobody steps in and grabs your loved one after you've done all the care. So take care of yourself, talk to your doctor, check yourself. And for some, it's going to be having a come to Jesus, come to Moses meeting with them, a serious conversation about this is what's going on and I need your help. For others, they're just not going to be there. And I wish I had a magic dust to give you to sprinkle on them and make them do what's the right thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't helpful at all, was it, Glenda?
No, I think it was very helpful
Peggy
because
says, I'm going back to Kentucky and I'm not doing this anymore.
that's
I
right.
I can detour that.
You
But the
don't live
family
here?
members, yeah, the family members, they don't come around.
No. And some of that I think too, I mean, I've thought about this over the time in my work. When they see your husband the way that he is now, they're afraid that may be their future. And so they just stay away. You know, I've seen that happen too. Let me just stop for just a second. You've seen a little survey pop up on your screen. We used to send out this via email, and now we are doing it live as you're on the session. So if you'll take the couple of seconds to go through that and give us feedback on this session and what you thought about it, we would greatly appreciate it. Okay, now on to questions. Melody, she was just listening today, Tam. She's one of our good long-standing caregivers, and that's not good, but that's where she is. She wants to know if we have not heard the phrase actively dying, we're back to hospice topic again, from our hospice provider yet. Does that mean that we may have more than 9 months to go on this journey, absence of any major falls, strokes, pneumonia, etc.?
I mean, everybody's different. I've seen people before they changed the rules who were on hospice for 5 years. They're obviously not actively dying. I've seen people that are actively dying, but then their body seems to rally and they're taken off of hospice, but then they're put back on hospice another month. So we ideally want hospice used for the time of actively dying, which is the final 9 months, the final year, the final 9 months. It's just that in our country, we don't. So Melody, your journey may be a little bit different. You've been so proactive about getting that care out there. So for every one of you, ask for the hospice order. It gives you another level of care to come in and give you another little bit of respite.
For sure. The sooner, the better. Nancy also asked, when do I ask the doctors to cut out some of his medications? He's on 9 prescriptions, an infusion once a month for immune system, an injection in his left eye for wet macular endoscopy for Barrett's, plus supplements. He's 83 years old. She believes is in the mid stage 5 after doing the DBAT. Good job, Nancy. He smoked for over 30 years and she thinks he has vascular dementia and Alzheimer's.
That would be a normal thought because smoking is considered a toxic dementia that becomes a vascular dementia. So it sounds like you're doing about right. I mean, that's a discussion between you and your physician. You know your husband best, and what would he want? I mean, you have to remember, somebody 85 growing up, we had no medicines. We had campho-phenique and mercurochrome and aspirin. And now we've, like you said, there's a shot for his eye. So You can ask the doctor about palliative care. You can, and you ultimately get to make the decision. And you should know when you withdraw people from medicines, it's not that they just, die. Some of these medicines have a half-life. They're in the system for a month or longer. So it can be several weeks before you see an effect of the medicine. So I think that's something for you to discuss with your physician. And again, your husband's wishes best. Someone I saw, Glenda, ask a question about a cough associated with aspiration pneumonia.
I probably haven't gotten down to that one yet.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Most pneumonia in elder people does not present with a cough. So there's typically not a cough. It's just that the person chokes typically during eating, and then develops aspiration pneumonia. Aspiration pneumonia becomes sepsis, which is blood poisoning. Excuse me. And that leads then to renal failure or kidney failure. So someone with aspiration pneumonia would be hospitalized or would be on hospice and being prepared for the end of life.
Right. Peggy says that her husband fights with her when she tries to help him brush his teeth, and then he won't let her help anymore, and he can't do it himself. Do you have any tips that she might try on that one?
I would try children's toothpaste and see if you can just sort of get him started and see what goes from there. And then some of it is, there's things that we have to sort of pick our battles on. Yeah. And if the best thing today is brushing the teeth one time, then you got them brushed one time. If the best way to get the teeth clean today is to give him a little sip of mouthwash, then that might be the best you can do today. The teeth are not what's killing him. It's the dementia that's killing him.
Right.
So you just horrible days. You got to pick your battle, or you can ask the doctor for something, a mild anti-anxiety cream that you put on his wrist, or a mild anti-anxiety that you can give him to calm him down enough to where you can do dental mouth care, because that's always challenging. Yeah. Glenda said, questions to look when looking at memory care facilities. Don't make an appointment, just show up. Stop by on the weekend. The residents should be clean. They should look well cared for. The staff should make eye contact with you and greet you. If they duck you and hide, then that tells you what they do when no one's there. Ask the other families, go at a mealtime, ask the other families how care is. And while you may encounter a smell in the building as you go by a room and someone's being cleaned, the building itself should not have a smell of urine. There should not be a smell of feces. The cars in the parking lot should be nice cars, meaning they pay their staff enough that their staff can drive a decent car. The ground should be clean and well kept. The food should be appetizing. It should look like food you would want to eat. And then ask families. They'll tell you, I hate this place. I love this place. This place is great.
Right. I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, everybody that's still on with us, and thank you for staying with us. Let's see. I want to do a shout out to Anne. She's calling in from Scotland today and for the first time, and we're glad that she's with us today.
Yay, Anne.
Yeah, she made it. Let me see. We had gotten an email from Anne, and she had questions about caffeine for people with dementia, and is decaffeinated tea and coffee okay?
Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning. That caffeine is a diuretic. It makes you pee, and people with dementia are having trouble drinking fluids. So we want them to not have caffeine. Now, you can't stop somebody from caffeine in one day. They will beat the daylights out of you. So take about a week to slowly move your person from fully caffeinated that they're on to something that's eventually decaf. But that's the reason why caffeine is not used in dementia people. Also, caffeine actually really does have a kick, and it really does have an impact on a damaged brain. So it can make your person more aggressive and more agitated. So no caffeine.
No caffeine. I'm in good shape on that one. Karen is talking about the person she's caring for is exit seeking and trying to leave unattended they could go out and get lost, suggestions for what they might try to address that behavior?
You've got to get a picture of them every day, because the nice picture you give the police is not who they normally look like. Get the Apple tags, tie an Apple tag on their shoelaces, put one in the wallet, in the purse, whatever they put on every day. Before we had alarm systems in communities, Glenda, you remember this, we used to put a 3-foot black rug in front of every exit door. Yep. And we also usually would ask the grandchildren to do it for us, to make a big stop sign on that door. And so they have a hard time stepping across that rug, because a 3-foot black rug looks like a big hole, and they will literally stop because it says stop sign. The other thing you do is, for an exit seeker, and we want to make sure they're in the home and they're safe because we can't watch them all the time, is we put the latch at the top of the door. You and I have never been trained in our lives to look up to unlatch a door. So those are the several things that we would do. They also need a bracelet on that says, I have dementia, call this number if I'm found, so that if the police find them, they're not rough with them. Does that make sense? So those are just some of the things we would do. But if somebody is exit seeking, that's an indicator that they should be in a memory care, either in a skilled facility or in a memory care community.
Right. And what we do know is those persons that have dementia and they get out and they do get lost, our police officers are generally not trained to deal with that. And so identifying them with a bracelet or some way to identify that they do have a dementia would be helpful, so they won't be treated like somebody that's been out drinking or whatever else.
Which is a lot of times what happens. The person may not be able to use language correctly, but they still don't look sick. So the cop will assume this person's been up to no good and treat them very, very harshly.
Yeah.
So do those things. And then the other thing is, at least every 2 weeks, take a picture of your loved one, because that's the picture they're going to need if they need to go look for them.
Right, right. Back to the questions now. Here we go. This is from Janine. She says, hi, Glenda. Question for Dr. Cummings. My mom, who is 82, isn't yet staged. I would guess 3, 4 out of 7, though she's 5 on the Bristol scale. We're in Maryland, DC, Baltimore area. Can you recommend a geriatrician or clinic in this area? I'm sorry, Janine, that's probably not going to happen because we don't know. I accompany her to all her doctor's appointments and see her general practitioner. Didn't seem to find an issue in the mini cognition. I requested and I stepped out of the room for it, since she looks to me to fill in the blanks. That's pretty typical behavior too.
Well, and also the mini mental status exam is not a cognition test. So you've got a general practitioner who has no business doing brain work, trying to do brain work. And so in the Silver Spring, Maryland's area, you've got several.
I forgot you lived up that way.
Pardon? Yeah, you've got some geriatric psychiatry groups up there that are very good, and they specialize in dementia. So I would look at those areas to get me the right person for help.
Yeah, I had forgotten you lived up in that area for a time. So Tony, we will post the session as a podcast. You can find that on the Caregiver Teleconnection website. You can also find it on YouTube. So you'll be able to sit down with your husband and sister and anybody else who's caring with you to view this presentation. And Peggy,
I have a question.
Yes, just one moment. And sure. Minerva also suggested you look at some of our other podcasts that have addressed some of this also. So that's a good recommendation, Minerva. Thank you so much. Okay, go ahead with your question.
Hi, I'm taking care of my father. He was diagnosed with vascular dementia last year. I suspect he has Lewy bodies because of all the things that I've heard you say on the videos I listen to, hallucinations. He's suspect of behavior, suspect that we put stuff in his food, or that we take his money, things like this. He also can barely walk, and this is all within a year that he's gone from being able to walk without a walker and maybe just only needing a cane to now, even with a walker, I I really just watch out for him. I'm like a helicopter mom because I don't want him to fall. So I'm always around him just to make sure he's balanced. Um, my question is staging when I do think he has Lewy bodies. I do have an upcoming test for him with a neurologist. I guess a psychiatry is what they said. The test would be at a that kind of a facility, but they said it would be long, and he's so fragile, and he's also so traumatized when I take him out somewhere because of his anxiety that I don't even know if it's worth it. I see all the symptoms, but I don't know if it's worth going. So when it comes to staging, I have a hard time because one day he's okay, and then the next day I feel like he could just leave us at any moment. And it's so hard to see those times where I think he's just going to go, and then yet on another day he seems to be now not himself but just much better. And I with this kind of up and down, I have no idea where he's at. He's lost about 20 pounds in the last year. He's gone from 3 meals a day to two, and even the two is difficult to encourage. He drinks way less water. And so staging is so hard. One thing I heard you say, I think in a previous video, am I correct, Dr. Cummings, that you mentioned that with Lewy body, it he could be not on bed, uh, um, on bed rest, in other words, where he's still mobile up until 2 weeks before.
You're not actually describing Lewy bodies. You're describing
Okay.
effects of vascular dementia. And I would assume more than likely you would have Alzheimer's in place as well, because it's normal once Alzheimer's begins that they begin to accuse people of stealing. You're
Okay.
describing someone who's in stage 6 and sounds like they're moving into stage 7. I would be talking to the doctor about a hospice order from him. You also mentioned keeping him from falling. That's there's no way to keep people with dementia from falling. They
I'm
because of brain damage. So we can't protect them from falling. That's just part of the disease. So don't let yourself be stressed about that. He may have picked up Lewy bodies. Again, I would go to lbda.org and look to see, because you're describing more vascular Alzheimer's things than true Lewy bodies things, but you're the one who sees him most. So go to lbda.org and see if any of that looks familiar. Go to nih.gov and in the search bar, put in Lewy body dementia handbook and read the handbook. And if any of those things come up, but I'm a real big proponent of, if my person was the way you sounded, why in the world would I want them to go for 8 hours of testing at a
I agree. Okay.
psychologist office? Because that's what it is. It's something I would cry if I had to do. If you told me somebody was going to read information to me a paragraph at a time and then quiz me about it, I'd be freaked out. And as far as I know, I don't have dementia. If he gets that anxious and that nervous, you got to think about at the end of time, when this is done, will you be able to say, I kept him comfortable, I fed him chocolate and I let him go? Or is somebody pressuring you to go, well, we've got to get through here and get this other stuff? If he's been diagnosed with vascular dementia, that's why he seems so spotty to you. But because of how the disease is progressing, he may have behaviors of different stages. The thing that you're looking at is, would a total stranger looking at him think nothing's wrong? And that's not possible because of his mobility. So then that would put him into stage 6 at least. And in stage 6, I would be asking for hospice care, not can we take him and get more testing. You got to remember, the doctor is doing the doctor's job, which is they want to test people, poke people, keep following people. They're not the ones doing care at home. They don't see what you see, the anxiety this is causing your dad, and you're just trying to keep him comfortable. So what would be served by that is, yeah, they'd get to bill insurance and they'd get to do work for a day, but for your dad, it would be miserable.
Yes. Okay. Now, his regular physician, when I took him in the last time, 2 months ago, he looked at him and he looked at me and he said in front of my father, "You know, he doesn't have long, don't you?" And I nodded my head yes. And he said,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
my dad actually felt relief.
Hmm.
He told me, "Now do you know why I don't want to do certain things?" He actually felt
Well,
relief.
I ask people when I'm talking to them, are you fixing to go anywhere? And they'll tell me, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. But it may for your dad just been a relief that now people will stop trying to poke me with needles. I mean, I have seen a doctor come in and try to draw blood on somebody who had an hour left to live. They were
Oh,
actively dying. It was apparent to everybody except the doctor, who wanted to come in and do one more thing. And the wife threw the doctor out of the room. But you're his caregiver. You're responsible for him. If to you it makes no sense to do this test, because what would be the purpose of it? And the purpose of it is it's part of the full set of testing that should have been done way back at the beginning,
yeah.
not from here. And
Okay.
I'm sorry that somebody even ordered that for him.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
it
thank
could
you
just be
so
a doctor
much.
not knowing what else to do. So we'll give you another test to go to. And it's just that there's no need for that. So I would ask for change in status. Change in status, use those terms. There's been a change in status, a down step. He's not the same that he was 2 months ago. He's
Yeah.
had steady and continuous weight loss, and ask for a hospice order.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yes,
you for
you hang
sharing,
in there. Y'all
Marty.
are all doing such a great job. Peggy in Tennessee, you're my
Right.
girl.
All of you are. Okay, we have two questions and then we're going to stop because we've gone almost an hour. I think this is some kind of record here.
Could be.
Okay, Selena, do you recommend dentures for dementia patients? My grandmother's teeth are bad and she wants to brush like 6 times a day because her gums are so bad.
She may be brushing because she's hurting.
Hmm.
So it depends on what stage she's in, but it's not at all unusual for people with dementia to have had a person might have had all of their teeth pulled, and they might get the dentures, but all they have to do is not wear them for 24 to 48 hours, and then the gums recede and the dentures don't fit anymore. So brushing the teeth constantly could be a hyperoral activity, or it could be that she's got infection in her teeth and it hurts, and that's why she's doing it, which would mean the teeth need to come out, because this cavity right here, these sinus cavities, are right next to this cavity holding the brain, and blood, that an infection from here can travel to here. So I would ask the dentist about having them removed. And then I don't know, I mean, I've watched a person with dementia, no teeth, eat a steak. So my questions would be about your person, more about what would be her outcome by getting these teeth removed. Do we have infected teeth, and do we need to get those teeth out? Because when you have gaps and holes in your mouth, it does make it harder to chew food. It would make her more likely to be a choking hazard, because some of the teeth are there and are working and other teeth aren't, and they're all meant to work together. We chop and then we begin to grind, and then we grind heavy and then we swallow. So I would talk to the dentist about what would be the best scenario of treatment for her.
Okay, thank you, Selena, for that.
Also,
Question.
Selena, she's going to throw the dentures away.
She is.
So,
She
you know,
is.
yeah.
Or
Hearing
hide
aids,
them, or
dentures, and
hide them
eyeglasses.
somewhere. Yeah, we hear that all the time. Last question, Monica, and this goes back to the basics. How important is it to have our loved one diagnosed with a specific type of dementia rather than just be given the diagnosis of dementia?
Well, the diagnosis of dementia is no different than telling you they have cancer, but not ever bothering to tell you which one. You sort of need to know which one. Now, you can take the 9 most common forms, that's 98% of all the dementias, and take away the ones you know they cannot possibly have. I can't have Parkinson's disease dementia if I don't have Parkinson's disease. So you take away the ones that it's not, and the ones you're left with are more than likely what you're dealing with. And you look at the behaviors that go with those dementias and see if you see them in your loved one, then that tells you what it is. And the most common dementia is Alzheimer's and vascular, and the combination of those two is mixed. So the most common dementia is a mixed dementia, and several of you have mentioned mixed dementias as you've talked today. Peggy thought, you know, we've got vascular, but I'm seeing some things that could be a Lewy body, it could be an Alzheimer's. So look at your 9 most common dementias, rule out the ones that it's not, and then you're able to go back to the doctor and ask better questions. Or a lot of times families sort of figure it out themselves, because the most common thing is going to be Alzheimer's, vascular, and a combination. And vascular is going to be indicated by smoker, strokes, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, high cholesterol, hyperlipidemia, obesity, cellulitis. All of those things are indicative of a vascular dementia. Alzheimer's is recognizable because of the repetition of information and asking the same questions over and over again. That's one of the presentations of Alzheimer's. So when you look at your dementia behavioral assessment tool, the way we're able to build those tools is dementias have specific behaviors that present because of where the brain is being damaged. And so by looking at how your person behaves, you're able to determine where the disease has progressed to. And then by taking away the dementias you know they cannot have, you're able to make a better determination about what you're left with. But you need to know which dementia it is, because it's part of your children and grandchildren's history, and it helps explain part of what they're doing. I have known women that were furious because their husband no longer loved them and had picked up a serious drinking problem. And the reality was he had picked up a type of FTD, a type of frontal temporal dementia, that its hallmark features are an inability to recognize or express emotion and a sudden interest in drinking. Alcohol's very sweet, so it's how the brain gets it. But I forgot what the question was, but you're doing a great job.
Well, Monica, the other thing, Minerva put on the chat box that Tam has a presentation on the Caregiver Teleconnection website or on YouTube talking about the stages of dementia. You'll also go there, Monica, and you will find her presentation on the different types of dementia and how to rule out just what she was talking about, how to rule out the ones that are, obviously not what your person has. Man, I have to say thank you to all of y'all for hanging in there. And you too, Tam.
Thank you. Thank you. I assume the rest of them are just bored and nothing better to do.
Let's see, Dr. Cummings and Glenda, this is why you should have these sessions once every month. Okay, Guinevere, we did not plant that, but thank you so much for saying that. We miss you.
I'm just saying.
We're just saying the same thing.
Look, I'm just saying it's needed, and I don't understand why, but I'll take what you give me.
Keep
Peggy
it
said
up,
she's not
Guinevere,
bored.
and I'll have you be doing one of these presentations because you've been here long enough. You could probably do one yourself.
That's true, Guinevere. Absolutely. What did I get tickled at? Oh, Peggy said she's not bored. She just needs all the help she can get.
I sure do.
Peggy, just come
Guinevere.
to Texas. We will hide you. We tell everybody who comes here, tell their children the phones don't work in Texas, so you can just come here and chill.
Yeah.
We'll chill you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We'll go out to Tam's place and get chilled for sure.
Hey, look.
She's out in the middle of nowhere.
I'm in.
Guinevere's ready. Okay, enough of this. If you have not looked at the Caregiver Teleconnection calendar for this month, please take advantage of that. You can find it on the website. You can contact Minerva. I gave you her number early on. Peggy wants to come to Texas. Okay, come on. We got plenty of room.
Peggy, I'm pretty sure your people ran my people out of Kentucky about 200 years ago. So yeah, come visit.
Yeah, for sure. Tam, in all seriousness, thank you so much for the presentation. I know, and I can just feel how much people need this and how much they get from it. So I want to thank you on their behalf for having these sessions. To say what Guinevere says, I think we've gone so far over today because we're not doing these as frequently. And so therefore, all these questions, they build up and we definitely want to answer them. So we go over. So thank y'all for hanging in. Tam, any final words?
No, good job, everybody. You're all doing a great job. Take care of yourselves. We want you to be the survivor. Okay. You're doing a great job with a disease that you didn't get any information about, and you keep trying, keep hanging in there, try to get some sleep. oddly enough, Glenda, last week, 2 people sent me messages saying they fell asleep listening to me on YouTube, which kind of freaked me out. But, if it helps, it helps. So take care of yourself, get sleep, get rest. You're all doing the best you can. You really, really are. So write a letter to yourself, do the YouTube stuff, do the self-compassion test, talk to your physician. And if your physician says, yeah, that caregiving is tough, get a better physician. Okay? Take care of you.
Yeah, if they discount what you're doing, and we know from studies, y'all are doing more than anybody in history has done in the caregiving field, and it is taking a toll. So take care of yourself, what Tam said, and come back. We'll be back. Let me see, we're in May, June. We'll be back in July, but we're all over YouTube. We have a lot of sessions up on the Caregiver Teleconnection website. Use those as a source of support for yourself. So now how to trap my siblings and make them watch. Oh, Janine, we can't help you with that one now. You may need some blocks.
Tranquilizer dart guns are still legal at Walmart. So you're going to have to dart them and capture them that way, Janine. It could be that. It could be
a big padlock. That's my suggestion. A big
Sometimes
padlock.
it's just that you might have to get fierce. Sometimes you just got to be real and say they're not going to be here. But if that happens, you make sure you document every dime you spend, every trip you make, everything you do. Get you a little notebook and start writing everything down, because they will show up eventually.
They will
take care of you.
So, okay, everybody, we've almost gone 2 hours here. I'm not trying to cut Tam off. We've given you her website. You know how to get in touch with her if you have further questions. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Linda. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Well Med.
Love you.